What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of TSC News right here on MNN with a special Wrestling Meets Hollywood edition episode. We're going to take a look back at some of our most memorable interviews with actors, including wrestlers who have become actors, and we're going to explore some fast facts courtesy of Scott Anderson on the likes of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Dave Bautista, John Cena, and other wrestlers turned actors who are killing it in Hollywood. But first, let's check out this throwback from October 2013. It is an interview with the former WWE Intercontinental, ECW, and Tag Team Champion, and a man who is currently one of the cornerstones of Lucha Underground, and a man who recently successfully released his own film, Boone the Bounty Hunter, that he even sold his house to finance. Now that's dedication. I'm talking about Johnny Mundo, aka John Morrison. I'm joined by a very special guest. He is the shaman of sexy, the Monday Night Delight, the Friday Night Delight. He's got more nicknames than he's won titles. He is John Hennigan, a.k.a. former WWE superstar John Morrison. John, thanks so much for joining us on this late night on the East Coast. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. At the office here in sunny Los Angeles. And, trying to get a little work done. Hit the gym earlier, working on producing Boone the Bounty Hunter. And I would correct your introduction in two ways. A, shaman. I would pronounce it shaman instead of shaman. And B, if you count the titles that I've won in independent wrestling federations, I might now have more titles than nicknames. I don't know. That one's a toss-up. One of the other things I loved growing up, though, was movies. I was a big fan of Hong Kong action, Jackie Chan, kung fu movies, and it's what I've been working on since I've been gone. Working on my acting, working on stunt fighting, and lately got this office to get into producing, which has been really fun and eye-opening. I'm getting to learn a lot about how things work behind the scenes, and and just Hollywood in general, and entertainment in general. And I would put wrestling into this category. You never say never. One, and two, never believe it until it actually happens. So it's been an interesting trip, and one thing that I've liked a lot about not being with WWE is having the autonomy to do what I want with my time. And it's been fun. It's been fun to have so much freedom with my time, and also just creatively to pursue my own projects.
And you're spectacular in the ring, but man, you take some crazy bumps sometimes. How's your body feeling these days, not wrestling full time now?
Amazing. No, you know what's funny is like I tweaked my back last week doing vortexes, and I feel like whether vortex is this crazy like parkour flip, whether I'm wrestling or training for fighting or stunts, I somehow always find a way to beat myself up, and I think it's just the way that I'm wired. I like being physical, and I like getting into the gym, working hard, and whatever kind of training I'm doing, I like going really hard, and it's just who I am, and it's always going to be a big part of my life.
Now, your nickname is I hope I pronounced this correctly, Shaman of Sexy. Is that the proper pronunciation?
Yeah, but I would say the Shaman of Sexy, especially being from Los Angeles, because, us Los Angelinos like to put the in front of a lot of the words that we say.
All right, well, you're the Shaman of Sexy. You're a good-looking guy. When you were growing up, did people ever just tell you, hey, dude, stick to acting, stick to modeling, you'll be all right? I mean, was that ever at the top of your list, or was wrestling always the first career path for you?
My very first, first of all, I don't think I was I think maybe I was a late bloomer. I wasn't one of the guys that was in intermediate school and high school that all the girls were fawning over. I didn't hear how beautiful it was every day like I do now from you, Fred, and I guess from guys like you. I don't know, see, maybe it was my train of thought. I forgot the whole question. Acting was something that I was interested in, and I took some acting classes when I was younger, and I in high school got into wrestling, and when I say wrestling, I mean collegiate wrestling. I was the high school team captain my junior and senior year. I went to UC Davis. I wrestled at Davis, and then I realized that a blend of of performance and physicality was what I was interested in. And at the time, what I really wanted to do was action acting. the type of stuff that Jackie Chan did. He was my hero at the time, and I slowly realized that professional wrestling was even closer to like what I wanted to do, because it was my first love when I was growing up as a kid, watching all these guys do these crazy moves, and the theatrics involved with pro wrestling is just pretty much encompassed everything that I thought was cool, and I still do. And it's been really fun to have the opportunity to do that, and to do some of the action acting stuff that I've been wanting to do for a really long time as well.
I saw a pic floating around on the internet of you and Roy Big Country Nelson of the UFC in togas. Were you guys just having a random toga party? What was that all about?
Well, it's LA. It's toga parties every weekend. It's crazy out here. That was a promo piece for the animated series Black Dynamite, and the two of us basically both got our asses kicked by a mannequin of Michael Jai White, and it was a lot of fun. Roy was a great guy, and we had a lot of fun that day. And he's a good guy. I'm gonna have to say what's up to him when I get out to Vegas in a couple weeks.
Are you an MMA fan at all?
I would say I'm a fan of everything. I'm first and foremost a fan of movies and stuff, but MMA definitely, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you think that MMA at all has kind of hurt the appeal of pro wrestling, or do you think they're more different than people think as far as audiences go and appeal?
I think it has hurt the appeal of professional wrestling. I think when you're growing up, for me, when I was a kid, I was watching TV thinking, that's wrestling. That's what I want to do when I grow up. And there was no other option. There was nothing else. Like in the same way that you could say in the 50s, when there were only 3 shows on TV and half the nation was watching I Love Lucy, it was because there was nothing else on. Well, now that there's another combat-oriented sport where 2 gladiators, so to speak, are fighting in an octagon or a ring, it's dividing the audience. And I would say it's definitely hurt the appeal of professional wrestling.
Do you think there's too many shows on TV? I mean, you got every week you got a UFC on TV, and then of course WWE, while they don't run as many pay-per-views, I think, they have Main Event, they have SmackDown, they have Raw. I mean, it's so much content, man. It's like to the point where, I don't know, everywhere you look, there's WWE, there's UFC. Do you think that hurts them in the long run, or do you think that helps them as far as, money goes and their bottom line?
It's hard to say. I heard this crazy statistic, I think it was a few weeks ago, something like every minute there's 900 hours of content uploaded onto YouTube, and it's probably outdated. It's probably even more than that now. And as far, I don't know why it made me think of that just now, but as far as all the content that's out there for pro wrestling, for MMA, the amount of pay-per-views, the 3-hour Raw, all that stuff, and I know what's happening. People are competing for market share and ad revenue, and the more airtime you have, the more ad revenue you can sell. And at some point, though, you have to balance quantity with quality and find that intersection that's the sweet spot. An economist would call it supply and demand, brother. And right now, supply is a little bit higher than demand, in my opinion.
As an athlete, did you feel like you were spread a little too thin on some of those years where they had like maybe 14 pay-per-views as opposed to maybe 12?
As far as spread too thin, like overexposed as the character of John Morrison, at times, yes. But that's because I think sometimes that the storylines that were created for me weren't as well thought out as some of the other storylines, which is fine. It's just how business goes. You don't have time to think of a fully thought out storyline for every character on the card. You have to start at the top and work your way down. I think as an athlete, I think my time was it was hard to have time to do anything but pro wrestling, doing the 200 shows a year. It would have been nice if we could have figured out some way to have a week off or have a few weeks off, or just an off season. Wrestling is one of the only sports that doesn't have an off season. When I say one of the only sports, I mean kind of the only sport that doesn't have an off season. And I think it would be nice for a lot of the guys to recharge their batteries if they had a little bit of time off to spend with their family and friends.
Absolutely. What's your schedule looking like right now?
Crazy. I Somehow, like I said, find ways to beat the crap out of myself nonstop, and also find ways to keep myself busy. I wrestled for FWE in Brooklyn on Saturday. Since I got back, I've been usually training like in the morning for like 4 hours, a combo of weight training and some kind of stunt fighting or parkour or martial arts. Then I hit the office and do some meetings. If you want to make it in LA, take a meeting. But taking meetings, looking for directors and people for Boone the Bounty Hunter, and in the meantime, doing interviews like this to promote myself and Out of Your Mind Fitness, and working on writing and stuff, and so basically putting in like 12-hour days and wrestling on the weekends, and it's kind of cool because it's what I want to do, it's what I choose to do with my time, but it definitely keeps me busy.
Did you have to overcome the stigma that you are a pro wrestler and maybe that vibe that they give? Because for whatever reason, certain casting directors don't look at pro wrestlers the same way they look at other people, even though you guys are pretty damn good actors, and hell, timing's everything in wrestling, right?
Yeah, I would say that pro wrestlers are great entertainers, and as far as acting goes, really what I found is in a live show environment, if you're doing a show at Madison Square Garden or the Staples Center or something, you're in a small stage in front of 20,000 people, and you have to be really big. You have to really emote so people can feel you. But with a camera, the camera comes in and gets it. So you don't have to be big physically or emote big. You have to have those thoughts and the intent in your mind, but you have to make everything smaller because the camera will come in and get what you're feeling. And as far as casting directors having a stigma with pro wrestlers versus versus other people, sometimes, yeah, but also like keep in mind that a lot of times what the stigma is a lot of times a wrestler might walk into a room and be going into an audition against somebody that's been acting for 8 years or 10 years. And as a pro wrestler, like you've got entertainment experience, but you haven't had necessarily like the acting training. Now, I think it's a very similar skill set and something that you can build up. And a lot of times when I leave rooms, I'll, whoever's there, the casting director or blah, 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 will say, hey, I was really impressed. You've been studying, you've been taking this seriously. And I think that really that's all that you need to do is if you take something as seriously as whatever it is that you were successful in. If you're a wrestler wrestling, if you're an MMA fighter fighting, or any kind of other athlete, basketball, if you apply yourself the same way that you applied yourself to basketball to acting, you're going to end up being successful in that too.
The Honorable Scott Anderson, what have you got for us this week?
All right, Fred, we are doing wrestlers turned actors. So, of course, we're going to start with the original. Well, at least in the modern era, the original. I'm talking about the one and only Hulk Hogan. He was one of the first wrestlers to, of course, go into acting. He appeared in the aforementioned Rocky III as Thunderlips. We mentioned that a couple of weeks ago here on the show. Also starred in movies such as No Holds Barred, Suburban Commando, Mr. Nanny, to name a few.
Three Ninjas.
He also Three Ninjas, yes. He also starred in the TV show Thunder in Paradise, which in a way got him actually to WCW, which of course ended up changing wrestling as we know it with the NWO forming. How about the Hot Rod, the one and only late great Rowdy Piper, the one and only John Cena. He starred in the movie 12 Rounds, The Marine. He was in Trainwreck, had a small cameo in Daddy's Home. He'll also be in Daddy's Home Part 2. Currently host of the Fox reality show American Grit. Here's a little fun fact, Fred. I don't know if you're even aware of this. He had a small, very small, uncredited cameo in the movie Ready to Rumble.
And shout out to John Cena, who's getting some critical acclaim for his recent starring role in The Wall. Good for him.
Yes. Also, we have Dave Bautista, former WWE World Champion, currently starring in the Guardians of the Galaxy series. He had Guardians of the Galaxy 2 just recently came out, already grossing over $600 million worldwide. So I think Dave Bautista is doing pretty well for himself. Speaking of Dave Bautista, his former Evolution teammate, Triple H, I'd call it teammate. He, of course, had a couple roles there. He was in Blade Trinity, starred in movies The Chaperone and Inside Out. So Triple H getting into the acting bug as well. How can you forget Stone Cold Steve Austin, starring in The Condemned? He had a role in The Longest Yard, The Expendables with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, just to name a few. The Big Show, Paul White, had a role in Jingle All the Way, and one of my all-time favorite lines, just because it is, when he says, "I'm going to deck your halls, bub." I don't know why. I find that hilarious. Maybe it's just me, Fred.
And how could we forget about John Morrison, who we mentioned at the top of the show? And Scott, can you guess who I actually have an interview with that was a co-star of Boone the Bounty Hunter with John Morrison?
I believe that would be Kevin Sorbo.
Hercules himself. I'm joined by actor, producer, martial artist, Kevin Sorbo. Did I miss anything?
Author.
Author as well. And what brings you here today at the Action Martial Arts Hall of Fame weekend?
You know, it's been going on a long time. They've asked me a couple times, and I had to be in New York anyway later this week because I've got a movie premiering, so I came out a couple days earlier, so it worked out.
What have you been up to lately?
I wrapped 5 movies this past year. I got 2 more coming up. I got a movie that just came out in DVD now called Abel's Field. It's a modern day Cain and Abel. Go to ablesfield.com for a trailer and information. It's out on Walmart. It's on Amazon. You get that. And I've got another movie in March on the Hallmark Channel called Shadow on the Mesa. It's a Western.
I understand Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is starring in a Hercules movie. Are you making a cameo at all in that?
On the Rock's movie, they better put me on there. I got a meeting with the production office in a couple weeks, so for me to do that show for 7 years, and they're shooting in New Zealand using most of my crew, they better put me on. It'd be stupid not to.
Or he'll lay the smack down. And we are also here for Boeing. We're kicking it. A lot of people here have used martial arts as a positive influence in their life to get through tough times. How did martial arts come into your life, and how can people discover martial arts?
Well, you know, really came in my life because of Hercules, you know. I worked with Doug Wong, who was one of Bruce Lee's students. He worked with me a lot before I went down to New Zealand started. We did martial arts every day on the set for 7 years. I worked with some amazing guys, all different walks of life, from different forms of, from karate, kung fu, taekwondo, didn't matter. It was all kinds of stuff. And it was just wonderful. It was a wonderful part of just being in that world. And Mike Boy's do it. I got my 11-year-old's been doing it for 5 years, my 8-year-old for 3 years. I think it's great, not only for discipline, but for coordination, eye-hand coordination, athleticism, movements, good for all sports as well.
Do you think on martial arts, the discipline that it brings, that it can prevent bullying from happening?
No question. It's huge in preventing that. It's no question about it.
Before I get out of here, I'm going to mention Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the highest grossing paid actor in Hollywood right now. You see the picture right there on the screen? Those are 2 good-looking guys, I have to admit. The picture's a little dated, but that's okay. You know, we won't hold that against either one of us. He has starred in the Fast and Furious franchises, as well as San Andreas, Moana. He's going to be doing the Jumanji remake as well. And as he once mentioned to John Cena, he also made Doom. I don't want to leave without mentioning the names such as Jesse the Body Ventura, Randy Savage, Randy Couture, Kevin Nash doing very well for himself. Many people might not know this fact about him. He was Super Shredder in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Fred, one more name to mention, Adam Edge Copeland, starred in Haven, recently cast in Vikings. He's a former TSC News guest. And you know what, Fred? For this week, I'm going to do your job. We have a clip of that. Let's go to that clip.
But that's my job.
Not this week, Fred.
I've been checking your Twitter, and it seems like every week you're at some different convention, whether it be a Comic-Con, a signing, something Haven-related. Have you been traveling more lately than WWE? It certainly seems like it.
Well, it's still been a lot of travel. You know, my girlfriend always busts my chops saying I'm like the world's most retired guy. You know, it's just that it's a different type of travel now. It's not a different city every day. At least now, if I do something, it's you know, I'm in that city for at least a few days, whether it's for appearances or anything like that. Which makes it a lot easier to deal with. You know, now generally if I'm filming Haven for 5 months, I'm in the same bed for 5 months. So that makes it a lot easier, you know, when you can adapt to like 2 or 3 beds throughout the year as opposed to like 200 or 300.
And I'm assuming you're not sitting next to people the size of Big Show on planes now.
No. It's actually, I'm considered the big person now, and which is always strange for me. Like, oh, dude, you're a big dude. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like average in the old job. So that was one thing to get used to realize that I was, going to be about 50 or 60 pounds heavier than everybody I'm working with now.
And do you get recognized more at these conventions for your work on Haven or WWE, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, any convention that I did this year was kind of backed on the wrestling thing. So, I don't really do a whole lot of them. When I did, it was wrestling fans that were coming because it was promoted, Adam Edge Copeland, the WWE Hall of Famer kind of thing. But now, little by little throughout the year, it's really started to filter in. It's like, hey, Dwight. I'm like, oh, wow, they actually don't know about, Edge. And that's pretty cool because, initially when I first started this, I was like, okay, I just don't want to fall flat in my face. And then it became, actually, I want to try and be good at this and not just good for a former wrestler. I actually want to try and get some chops and do this, some form of justice, and not just, oh yeah, he's pretty good for a guy, who used to be a wrestler. I don't want to be judged on that criteria.
Did you have any formal acting training, or did you just kind of transition from pro wrestling to acting and kind of learn on the job?
Initially, it was just learn on the job. It was kind of all fell into my lap, and I fell into their lap, and it was just kind of figuring out as I went. And there was some similarities. Obviously, it's all performance based, but with WWE, it's kind of instant gratification. Right away whether something worked or not. So whether to take it down a certain path or take it down a different path. This was a lot. It's repetition. But the luxury of it is that you have a script now, and you can sit down with that script, for a week or. I personally like to sit down with the scenes that I have the next day, the night before, and really just kind of go over them and try different things. I never had that luxury before. It was the way I like to do it, at least, was go out there with maybe 5 or 6 bullet points and, fill 10 or 15 minutes on live TV. So there's similarities, but there's a lot of differences. And this was, I was just kind of learning, flying by the seat of my pants. This year I finally took some classes. And I had some downtime after my neck surgery, so I thought, okay, I gotta actually try and put some work into this to try and improve my craft.
How's your body feeling?
Feels pretty good. Feels way better than when I was getting thrown around. You start to realize what your new normal is. When you're doing that job. You're just kind of in a constant state of pain, really, and there's this kind of weird fog that happens when you travel that much, and you don't realize how you don't really carry on conversations with people anymore. You just kind of grunt and get to the next, gate or the next arena. So being retired from that now, I realize how beat up I felt. As it kind of gradually wore away, I was like, wow, I'm starting to feel like a human being again. I was, I was beat up, but, I wake up, I have energy now, and can do everything essentially that I used to do besides, the actual wrestling.
Is there anybody either on the cast of Haven or somebody that in the industry that's your go-to guy or girl for acting advice? I'll take advice from anybody. I'll sit down with whoever I'm doing my scene with and, pick their brains. And everybody has been on Haven's been really, really cool and understanding and kind of knew that I was jumping into this thing, brand new. So it's been nice in that respect to be able to just kind of go, hey, what do you think about this? Or what decision would you make? Or what process do you kind of go through to get ready for something like this? So it's been really cool that they're willing to do that. And then I've never had a problem asking for advice. I'd rather do that than think I know it all and not know it all. Because when do you ever really know it all? Of course. And when you were a wrestler, was there ever a thought in the back of your mind thinking, hey, you know what, maybe I should try this acting thing? And of course, you did Bending the Rules for WWE Studios. Was there any point before you started with Haven that you said, you know what, maybe I should try movies after wrestling?
No, it was never a plan. I never even thought in those terms. I was like 100% focused on the job that was in front of me, which was WWE. Yeah, I mean, that was all I ever wanted to do. So, while I was doing it, I wasn't starting to look at other things. I was really focused on that. And for me personally, at least the way I'm wired, I had to be that way. I had to focus entirely on that, or, because it's so draining, if you're not, you're going to quickly get weeded out of the system. And, being there for 15 years, that for me was the way I had to do it, because if I started spreading myself any more thin, I would have been gone way before then. I had offers throughout the years, and it didn't appeal to me at the time. I was fully immersed in doing, WWE, but I had to retire. So what do? Well, okay, let's see. What is there to do? The Haven role just all kind of fell into place like 2 days after I retired. So it was kind of a nice little bit of serendipity, and it just worked out, but it wasn't anything that I was, working toward. What happened is I enjoyed myself a lot. It was a lot of fun, and it was still a creative process that I was able to kind of dip into, and that I realized I needed. So because it was fun, that's kind of why it's continued. It's been a great, it's a great gig if you can get it. It's just like wrestling was.
Do you have a sense of camaraderie with the cast and crew like you did with some of the guys in WWE?
It's a different kind of camaraderie. It's much less political. It's a little bit more of a. There's similarities for sure, because you're with these people. In wrestling, you're with them more than you are your family. With this, with acting, you're 5 months together, and then suddenly you're not. So there's kind of like a re-entry into normal everyday life after that. Whereas with wrestling, you never had that re-entry. You are always in it.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this special Wrestling Meets Hollywood edition of TSC News. If you like what you see, please visit youtube.com/The Sports Courier. Click that subscribe button. SoundCloud.com/TSC News. You can also check out our gaming channel, youtube.com/TSC Gaming, and subscribe to that. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place, right here on MNN2 and YouTube. Until next time, as always, enjoy the matches and the movies.